Today's alumni career story is with Graham Rich. Graham trained as a GP but changed course to take an MBA at INSEAD, going on to management roles in the UK National Health Service, including 2 different CEO roles, the last one as CEO of one of the UK's largest hospital groups. On the subject of being CEO, Graham, the case studies we do at INSEAD and all business schools often ask students to imagine themselves as the CEO of some huge organisation. And in 2001, you actually became the CEO of an NHS trust with 7,000 staff. How does the reality compare with the case study?
The time when I think that I'm doing an INSEAD type CEO, it would be giving some sort of inspirational talk to a room full of senior members of staff where you're talking about the vision and what people need to do, and that's about 2% of your time. So very little. You spend a lot of time in committee meetings, in finance audit committee meetings, sort of formal governance requirements, and the content of those sessions are actually quite tedious, predictable, and don't really require a high level of skill. So the reality is not quite as attractive as what I thought it might be at INSEAD. The other aspects are fantastic, though. You get to influence the culture of the organisation. You have this enormous privilege of being able to walk into a room full of staff and all of the staff knowing when you've arrived, and all of the staff thinking it must be important because the CEO's here. So just by walking into a room, you can signal the importance of the topic matter of the meeting.
Let's talk a bit about governance, Graham. When you've been a CEO, what kind of people do you want on your board as non-executives?
Well, we talk about the non-executives as critical friends. So you need people who can challenge, who can deal with the complexity, that can read a paper properly and come with insightful questions, but who are able to see the big picture and don't necessarily drill down right to the nth detail, and who also are happy to leave it to the executives to implement or make things happen.
Do you look for particular skills from non-executives?
We like to have a finance person on the board, and that's because if you need somebody to mark the finance director, in a sporting analogy, you need to have sufficient detail and challenge to make sure that your finance director is straight and true. And usually they also chair the audit committee and the finance committee. That's a key role. We also like lawyers, people who can think about corporate governance, can think about the legality of actions, and they tend to also think logically and in a structured way. I also like, if possible, to have a sort of general business development, marketing type person. So people that have been consultants or have run their own businesses or have been part of big global companies in a general management role are very helpful, because you need somebody who can range across the topics. And then it would partly depend on what the organisation is trying to do. So if you have a big building program, you might want a property professional. If you are doing mergers and acquisitions, it might be helpful to have somebody who's done that in the private sector. So it depends.
So you now work back in the private sector, Graham, as a non-exec on a health startup and for BCG. Do you think that public and private sector boards work differently?
I don't think so, but I think the dimensions of what's considered important are different. So public sector boards are we certain this is value for money? Are we certain this is consistent with our ethics? How would this look in the local paper? What does the staff think? And so there's a lot more dimensions that they're using to make a decision. The private sector board that I've sat on is, does this help the company? Does it make it more sustainable? Does it make money? Does it prepare it for sale? Et cetera, et cetera. Less concerned with some of the other dimensions.
Changing tack a bit, what have you learnt, Graham, about managing your career?
In the early stage of my career, I used to get bored, and I would think, okay, I've learned this job, I need to move. And then two things happened to me. I'd been in a job for about 3 or 4 years, and I was thinking, I've got to get out of here because I've learnt it. And the chief executive said to me, he said, you have to learn how to renew your own interest within the same role. So either by expanding it or doing it differently or whatever. Otherwise, you're destined to uproot your family, to have to rebuild networks and start again. So that was useful advice. And then I think the other thing is a more fundamental, almost philosophical approach where you need to appreciate what you have. And day to day appreciate what you have in the moment. And there's a trend at the moment for mindfulness, to appreciate the moment and to make conscious decisions about the moment. And I've tried to start to do that more, particularly as I got older. Whereas when I was younger, I was always thinking, how can I get to the next level? It'll be fine once I'm promoted. Once I'm a director, I'll have control of my diary. Once I'm a CEO, everything will be fine. And then you realize that it can be all lost in a moment, in a car crash, or a serious illness, or the organization could be merged. It could all be gone. And all individuals who come to INSEAD are extremely lucky to be here, to have the skills, the knowledge, the capability to participate in a program of such high caliber. They're all extremely lucky, and they should enjoy each day for what it is.